We're getting our first look tonight at the 3 people arrested in last night's protest. They are all facing charges from aggravated assault on an officer to disorderly conduct. And police say the man you see there with the bloody mugshot shoulder checked officers and threatened to mess them up, and got roughed up himself when he reportedly kept reaching for his gun, which police say was loaded and chambered. Tonight, a lot of people are asking who's to blame for last night's seemingly peaceful protest getting out of control. Police say they were forced to move in on those protesters who threw rocks, water bottles, and gas at them. Protesters say police made the first move.
Why do you shoot at innocent people? You can do better than that, Phoenix Police Department. That's terrible police work. There are other ways, proven ways, to deal with crowd control.
I don't think our level of force was overdone. I think it was calculated. I don't think we were abusive. I think we did everything clearly, methodically, and I think we did a great job in that tense scenario and situation.
The county attorney said Phoenix police exercised appropriate restraint and resolve controlling a difficult situation. And while he is waiting for a full review, he commended police for their swift action to stop the small fractions using isolated acts of violence. And in fact, our very own Mike Watkiss was right in the middle of it all. Did you have a good sense of what first provoked things to turn violent last night?
Yeah, that certainly is the $64,000 question today, Nicole. I can tell you what started as a definitely very passionate but decidedly peaceful protest outside the Phoenix Convention Center last night. It didn't last long. Shortly after President Trump wrapped up his fiery speech inside, things took a rather dramatic turn.
Oh, I see pepper balls. I see pepper balls. I see pepper. They're firing a lot of pepper balls.
The police, another flash bomb not far from our location, and now the smoke is billowing up in the streets and here on the property of the Herberger Theater. We heard initially that bottles were being thrown at police. We moved down to that location, smoke coming our way, and moved down to that location, and there was definitely some agitators interacting with the police over the barricades across the street. Next thing we know, that the flashbangs and the smoke is being deployed. So again, we're moving back, but this crowd is greatly thinned out, but it means that I think most of these people are now being dispersed. Police definitely taking a more aggressive tactic, trying to get these folks out of here.
Yeah, police deploying smoke grenades, pepper balls, tear gas, and pepper spray after they say some in the crowd started throwing bottles and rocks at them, and maybe some sort of smoke bomb. For about the next 2 hours, skirmishes flaring throughout downtown area as the large deployment of riot-ready officers faced off against the agitators. It took some time as they tried to clear the streets and finally restore the peace, Nicole.
Okay, so the pictures that we were just seeing right there, so dramatic because they've been shared on social media across the country. And a lot of people had these questions. Why did police show that use of force, walking down the streets when people were peacefully protesting? The night didn't start out that way. Law enforcement didn't start out with their riot masks down and throwing pepper spray. How did it progress to that?
No, and it was, again, it was after the things had gone very well up until the rally broke up inside. Folks started coming out, and it got a lot more aggressive. The sun had gone down by this time. It was nighttime. Many of the protesters had left. It was really, some hardcore folks. And I think a lot of protesters were still there. It was a big crowd. But the face-off with police, and the first time we became aware of it, we started to hear people just sandwiched next to us saying, these were other protesters talking to saying, stop throwing bottles at the cops. So we hear protesters trying to basically chastising other protesters from throwing objects at police. That's where we saw things going wrong. This was 40 feet from us.
Sure.
We dashed over, and that's when the first flashbang, and that's when the police started to react with those flashbangs and the smoke. But we definitely heard folks in the crowd, protesters, talking to other protesters to stop throwing things at police.
And it's really a handful of those people who were provoking police in that way with any kind of physical threats of violence or anything like that.
If you condemn all of these protesters, that's wrong. There were people that definitely went down there, and I think that there were some folks who were going to start lobbing stuff at cops at some point along the evening. and it happened then. But the vast majority were not into it for that reason. But you know, you get a couple of agitators and it can go bad quick.
Absolutely. Now, we've said last night when we were watching this unfold, we did hear audible warnings from law enforcement saying, please disperse, don't throw things. And we heard from people that they were making these audible warnings before they started responding to the crowd with any of that pepper spray and stuff. I asked you if you heard that, but you said it was just so chaotic. You couldn't even hear some of the warnings police were giving.
We were really at the epicenter where this sort of flashed last night, and people were screaming all around. And if police were giving out that kind of warning, I didn't hear it.
Wow.
But you know, people are screaming. Somebody could have been screaming at me 5 feet away, and I wouldn't have heard them because I had people 2 feet away screaming. It was very loud. Could they have issued that warning? And if they're saying they do, you know, I'm sure there's audio somewhere, but I didn't hear any warnings. I heard protesters warning other protesters not to throw things at police, and then suddenly there is the bang and the smoke. And you saw how it unfolded.
Which is really interesting because we had a lot of protesters saying, I was there to peacefully protest.
And there were a lot of them.
And if you have some people creating shenanigans on the side that creates a volatile, violent situation for everyone, those people who were there to peacefully protest, you did witness, though, and I think we saw live unfold later on, there were some peaceful protesters who sat down, crossed their legs, and law enforcement came and said, you need to move, you need to move. They didn't move. And law enforcement didn't then handcuff them or anything like that. They just let them peacefully protest, because I think that was the big point of contention for a lot of those protesters. Like, we have a right to be there to protest. And if we're not going to be creating violence, what don't we have the right to be down there?
And that's certainly the contention. We're going to do a post-mortem on this for a couple of days, and we'll see what really happened. But, you know, it was a sad time when the community sort of, you know, comes at it, you know, tearing itself apart. And I live here, you live here. It was sort of a grim night in the Phoenix area.
Nobody wanted to see that happen.
I don't think so.
Mike, we appreciate your perspective and sharing that, being there, putting yourself even in the line of fire, as it were. But thank
what we
you.
do.
I know it. You know, Donna Rossi, your colleague, sat down with Phoenix Police Chief Jerry Williams, and she took a look at some of the footage that we got last night about what happened, and she kind of sounds off her perspective on how her officers responded. We're going to have that perspective coming up for you at 5 o'clock, and we'll check back in with you, Mike, in just a little bit.